Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second in the DC Byte series of Market Spotlights. Today I'm joined by Vivian, and we are going to be looking at Singapore's spillover markets and discussing the rise of Johor Bahru and Batam. Vivian, why did we decide to cover these two markets?
I think James really, but Johor and Batam has really been the buzzword of our recent conversations, especially when we talk about the region. So I think there are many factors that have placed them well as data center markets, but the moratorium in Singapore has actually kickstarted most of the developments there. And I think for many years, Singapore has quietly been the default location for most data center operators looking for a place to serve the region. But as Singapore hosts most of the capacity, it experienced like certain issues, for example, with the carbon emissions that comes with data centers, especially when there is a commitment towards the Paris Agreement, power, because in 2020 the government has also published that data center consume 7% of Singapore's electricity, while this is like 3 times higher than the average in like globally. And I think these are the factors that the Singapore government has grappled with and decided that in 2019 that they will put a temporary ban on new projects, and they also would like to study more efficient way for data centers to operate. So the conversation then had started on how Batam and Johor can be alternative markets for Singapore. And so I think now is a good opportunity to look at these markets again with the many announcements that we have heard, and also to provide the DC Bytes perspective on them.
Yeah, no, thank you, Vivian. I think we really saw the rise from clients asking us about these two markets, coincidentally around the same time that you joined. Previously, people were all about Jakarta, Bangkok, even KL to a certain degree, but since the moratorium has come out, and since probably that first announcement from Johor, it's kind of kind of a trickle has become a steady flood. So, Vivian, what is the current state of play in both these markets right now?
So I think to answer the question in short, both markets have experienced accelerated growth. And I think now is a good time to actually port over to our platform to look at the data that we have covered on both markets. So just to introduce, this is DC Byte Analytics platform. So on this platform, we track data centers in the region. And what you're seeing now is the market analytics for Johor. So currently for Johor market, we have a total record IT capacity of 722, of which 33 is live, 154 is under construction, 118 is committed, and 416 is in the early stage. So for audience who are new to the definitions, DC Byte actually categorizes them in 4 different ones that you see up here. So live and under construction is self-explanatory. So more on the committed refers to projects that we see have real development potential, which means resources such as land and power are secured, and it's likely to succeed. And for early stage capacity are for projects that have been announced, but of which we are still looking at it closely to verify if they still have the necessary resources, anchor tenants, to start the development.
Okay, great. And how does Batam look? So we see here Johor has got over 700 megawatts of total supply. What's the situation like in Batam?
So just to port over to Batam, so currently Batam we have it at 157. So Batam is currently a very nascent market. As you can see, less than 1 megawatt is live. Most are in the under construction, committed and early stage pipeline. So I think one of the difference is in, if you look closely at their vacancy rate. So Johor actually has a vacancy rate of 9%, which is lower, and this is also because of how Johor have evolved uniquely as a build-to-suit market for OTT and CSP players. So this we could touch on it further when we look at the site's photos later. And for both markets, they are predominantly co-location as well, as you can see from the market composition on the right.
Great. Well, Vivian, like we've seen the high level numbers. Obviously, Johor has got over 700 megawatts in the supply pipeline. Batam, just over 150, which isn't insignificant, especially since it had a standing start. How would you compare both markets, though?
So I think at this time it's good that we can take a quick look at the supply and take-up graph. So for audience who are new to this graph, the purple bars that you see here are actually the aggregate supply. So this includes the live, under construction, committed and early stage capacity for both co-location and self-built facility. And the black line that you see here is actually the annual take-up. So as you can see, this is for Johor. 2021, the first jump in the market was actually contributed by Keppel Johor 1 facility, followed by the announcement of Bridge Data's MY06 that was 100 megawatt across 3 different buildings. And then 2022, we have seen a whole series of announcements, including Yonder, GDS, YTL, Equinix, and AirTrunk at the end of the year. And it continued to grow in 2023, where we see a new announcements by DC Science and MN Holdings. So just to compare one for one to Batam. So likewise, the market sprouted in 2021. This was contributed by GDS Holdings and the groundbreaking of Data Center First and the partnership between Esler Group and Huawei. While 2022, it was contributed by Neutral DC partnership with Singtel and Medco Power Indonesia, and CX, who is also building a retail co-location facility alongside its subsea cable exchange. In 2023, we have recently also seen the announcement by Princeton Digital Group. So I think to compare both markets, they have both experienced a surge in the growth, and both of them have their own advantage and disadvantages. So these are qualities that will all set them as data center markets for the region. So I think more of this analysis, if you are keen, can be found in the report that will be published.
Yeah. There's some. We obviously we're talking through the report here, but the report links etc. will be below in the video. So do check out the report if you're just coming across this. That will be available as a PDF to share. So Vivian, we've talked a lot about the supply, and it's clear that like nearly a gigawatt of supply is coming onto the market across Batam and Johor. How does the demand side of things look?
So if you were to compare both markets at the point that we are recording this video, Johor has been able to attract more players to its shores currently. So based on the data that we have seen just now, assuming that both markets build out the capacity, Johor is expected to be 5 times the size of Batam. And I think, James, it's a good time to look at some of the sites photos that we have taken on our market inspection.
Yeah, do please. So the DC Byte team, as some of you may have seen on our LinkedIn posts, etc. We're always off. It's very important that we check out some of these sites and verify what's being put out into the market. So you've got a couple of good sites from your visits, Vivian. Let's have a look.
So we have chosen 3 sites in Johor just to share in this webinar. So in terms of demand, we have seen players like GDS Holdings, who have announced their big 64 megawatt win in Johor. So these are the photos that we have snapped in March 2022. So as you can see, at this time the construction was just about to begin, and when we returned to the site in August 2022, we're able to see that the metal frames are already up. And this is just a clearer picture of it. And last month, we're actually back in Johor, and we can see that steady progress have been made and they are close to the completion.
Yeah, what's really interesting, I think, about the capacity in Johor, and I think these photos testify to that, is that in some of the emerging markets, we're seeing big announcements, not necessarily being built out or being built out in smaller phases, whereas all of these mega announcements in Johor, or certainly a lot of them, we're seeing the construction going up very, very quickly. It is, of course, there is 1 or 2 major clients behind most of these developments, but it's clear that Johor is absolutely taking off as per these photos. We've got a couple more, right?
Jim, so actually on your point on very short construction timeline, an interesting one is Bridge MY06. So they announced the acquisition of their land, I think, in 2021. So we went to their site around May 2022. So this was the site that we saw. The metal frames were just up, and we were quite surprised when we were invited to their launch later in October, which we actually saw that the building was already completed for the first one, which is 19 megawatt. And phase 2, which is the second and the third building, construction were already underway. And last month when we visited the site, we can also see the steady progress of the construction, as you can see here.
Yeah, well, like the one of the advantages that Johor has, certainly in terms of construction, is the fact that it's kind of industrial park style developments, in the sense that there's none of the issues that a Singapore or a Hong Kong might have, and there's no need to go vertical like they might do in Singapore, which allows these deployments to be built a lot quicker than they might otherwise be able to be built in Singapore. So yeah, that's definitely an advantage that Johor has as well. It just lends itself to quick build times, which for demanding clients is very useful from the operator point of view.
So just another example that we can share, it's YTLC data center. So for this site, it's a new development entirely, and this was the site that we saw in August 2022. So likewise, when we went back to the site last month, the metal frames are already up.
Yeah, a lot of great progress being made. So, what for anyone who's watching this, what are the kind of the key takeaways you think that they should kind of glean from both the report and what we're talking about here today?
So I think if we were to speak about both markets now, Johor would have definitely made further inroads than Batam as a spillover market. But we are still quite positive on the growth of Batam. This is also harmonious with the greater trend of decentralization, where operators are moving closer towards where the demand is, and also data privacy laws where data are expected to be hosted within the host country.
Yeah, well, again, as per the report, which this session is actually based on, I think you very nicely outlined some of the various advantages that Johor and Batam have over one another. So I think, like I said, check that out, because like Batam, for example, has got all the subsea cables just right off the coast there, which obviously great connectivity from that point of view. Well, I think that's it. Vivian, thank you for that overview. That was really useful, and I hope everyone who's watching at home or your office or on the train, wherever you may be watching it, enjoyed that. I think next edition, which will be out about a month from this one, I think we're switching region entirely, and I believe we're going to be doing a London spotlight, and we're going to be, I think, focusing on the kind of the incredible take-up in particular that London has seen in 2022, and not just a COVID thing. It was continued demand there. So again, thanks everyone for watching, and thanks for presenting with me or talking with me today, Vivian.
Thanks, James.